Hi everyone, welcome back to the 12 Days of the Holidays. This is Miss D, your Cocoa Librarian, with a holiday classic story for you. Today I'm going to be reading The Polar Express. Let me see if I can get the glare a little bit out of there for you. The Polar Express. So let's all get ready and get strapped in to take a ride on the Polar Express. Are we ready? I'm ready. On Christmas Eve, many years ago, I lay quietly in my bed. I did not rustle the sheets. I breathed slowly and silently. I was listening for a sound a friend told me I'd never hear, the ringing of Santa's sleigh bells. There's no Santa, my friend had insisted, but I knew he was wrong. Late the night, I did hear a sound, though not of ringing bells. From outside came the sound of a hissing steam and squeaking metal. I looked through my window and saw a train standing perfectly still in front of me. It was wrapped in an apron of steam. Snowflakes fell lightly around it. A conductor stood at the open door of one of the cars. He took a large pocket watch from his vest, then looked up at my window. I put on my slippers and robe. I tiptoed down the stairs and out the door. "All aboard!" the conductor cried out. I ran up to him. "Well," he said, "are you coming?" "Where?" I asked. "Why, to the North Pole, of course," was his answer. "This is the Polar Express." I took his outstretched hand, and he pulled me aboard. The train was filled with other children, all in their pajamas and nightgowns. We sang Christmas carols and ate candies with nougat centers as white as snow. We drank hot chocolate as thick and rich as melted chocolate bars. Outside, the lights of the town and villages flickered in the distance as the Polar Express raced on. So the sound of the trains going is like... Soon, there were no more lights to be seen. We traveled through the cold, dark forest where lean wolves roamed and white-tailed rabbits hid from our train as it thundered through the quiet wilderness. We climbed mountains so high it seemed as if we could scrape the moon, but the Polar Express never slowed down. Faster and faster we ran along, rolling over peaks and through valleys like a car on a roller coaster. It's going. The mountains turned into hills, the snow to snow-covered plains. We crossed a barren desert of ice, the great polar ice caps. Lights appeared in the distance. They looked like the lights of a strange ocean liner sailing on a frozen sea. "There," said the conductor, "is the North Pole." The North Pole. It was a huge city standing alone on the top of the world, filled with factories where every Christmas toy was made. At first, we saw no elves. "They are gathering at the center of the city," the conductor told us. "That is where Santa will give the first gift of Christmas." "Who receives the first gift?" we all asked. The conductor answered, "He will choose one of you." "Look!" shouted one of the children. "Elves!" Outside, we saw hundreds of elves. As our train drew closer to the center of the North Pole, we slowed down to a crawl. So crowded were the streets with Santa's helpers, when the Polar Express could go no further, we stopped, and the conductor let us outside. We pressed through the crowd to the edge of the large open circle. In front of us stood Santa's sleigh. The reindeers were excited. They pranced and paced, ringing the silver sleigh bells that hung from their harnesses. It was a magical sound, like nothing I'd ever heard. Across the circle, the elves moved apart, and Santa Claus appeared. The elves cheered wildly, "Yay!" He marched over to us, and pointing to me, he said, "Let's have this fella here." He jumped into his sleigh. The conductor handed me up. I sat on Santa's knee, and he asked, "Now what would you want for Christmas?" I knew that I could have any gift I could imagine, but the only thing I wanted most from Christmas was not inside Santa's giant bag. What I wanted more than anything was one silver bell from Santa's sleigh. When I asked, Santa smiled. Then he gave me a hug and told an elf to cut a bell from the reindeer's harness. The elf tossed it up to Santa. He stood holding the bell high above him and called out, "This is the first gift of Christmas." A clock struck midnight as the elves roared for their approval. Roared their approval. My bad. Santa handed the bell to me, and I put it in my bathrobe pocket. The conductor helped me down from the sleigh. Santa shouted out the reindeers' names and cracked his whip. His team charged forward and climbed into the air. Santa circled once above us, then disappeared in the cold, dark polar night. As soon as we were back inside the Polar Express, the other children asked to see the bell. I reached into my pocket, but the only thing I felt was a hole. No. I had lost the silver bell from Santa's sleigh. "Let's hurry outside and look for it," one of the children said. But the train gave a sudden lurch and started moving. We were on our way home. It broke my heart to lose the bell. When the train reached my house, I sadly left the other children. I stood at the doorway and waved goodbye. The conductor said something from the moving train, but I couldn't hear him. "What?" I yelled. He cupped his hand around his mouth. "Merry Christmas!" he shouted. The Polar Express let out a loud blast from its whistle and sped away. Stumbling over words there. On Christmas morning, my little sister Sarah and I opened our presents. When it looked as if everything had been unwrapped, Sarah found one last small box behind the tree. It had my name on it. Inside was a silver bell. There was a note. "Found this on the seat of my sleigh. Fix that hole in your pocket. Signed, Mr. C." I shook the bell. It made the most beautiful sound my sister and I had ever heard. But my mother said, "Oh, that's too bad." "Yes," said my father, "it's broken." When I'd shaken the bell, my parents had not heard a sound. At one time, most of my friends could hear the bell, but as the years passed, it fell silent for all of them. Even Sarah found one Christmas that she could no longer hear the sweet sound. Though I've grown old, the bell still rings for me, as it does for all who truly believe. And that was the Polar Express. So for those of you who aren't aware, the author of the Polar Express, von Allsburg, he actually wrote Jumanji as well, which is a super awesome book to read, and it's always available to you at your library. So I always tell people, make sure you're exploring your library, check out some more holiday books that there is at your library, speak with your librarian, maybe they can recommend some classics or some new ones. So this holiday season, make sure you're enjoying being healthy, staying safe, being happy, spreading cheer, jingle, jingle, jingle. And most of all, this has been Miss D, your Cocoa Librarian. Happy reading. Bye. This has been Miss D, your Cocoa Librarian. Happy holidays.